Prabhupada's quarters, and I remember him sitting in a shaft of light underneath a window. And he didn't have a shirt on. He was dishing out prasadam in this corner. So I said, Hare Krishna, Swamiji. And he said, what is your name? I said, Joan. And he said, so you're from your sister's family? When will the other family members come? I said, I'm the only one. No one else is coming. He said, oh. In India, generally there's a big preparation from the bride side of the family. Never mind. We will celebrate. So that day was my first lunch, and that was a very memorable lunch for a number of reasons. I was a macrobiotic aficionado at that time, and Srila Prabhupada's prasadam was all just power-packed with not only taste, but of course, because his hands had touched it, the way that he served the prasad to the devotees was like no meal I'd ever had. There was so much affection that manifested through Srila Prabhupada's distribution. Another side point, each one of the men ate up to 12 chapatis at a sitting. So that means Srila Prabhupada made a minimum of 144 chapatis for base to start, and then went on with whatever else they wanted to eat. So that was the very first time that I met Srila Prabhupada, that lunch. Well, actually in those days, we were so inefficient at everything that we did, and so incapable of knowing the significance of what initiation meant. And I remember that, of course, at our fire yagya for the marriage, we we didn't have enough money to buy butter, so we used margarine. And when Srila Prabhupada tried to start the fire, he picked up a piece of wood and he dipped it in. Beautiful. Prabhupada's hands were magnificent, long fingers like this. He picked it up and held it over the flame, and it went. He did it again. Over the fire, no action. So he looked up very grave and said, oh, this marriage will have a very slow start. I was mortified at that. I thought, uh-oh, what have I gotten into now? But yeah, very significant. I suppose at initiation, I do remember very clearly that Srila Prabhupada first gave me the name Kalindi, which is another name of Yamuna. And very quickly, within 10-12 seconds, he said, no, it is Yamuna Devi. And I said, what does that mean, Swamiji? And he said, the river that Krishna sports in Vrindavan is Yamuna. Morning walks were one of the most relishable aspects of spending time with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gave us access to spend time with him all day and into the night. But for me, in that early San Francisco period, I generally was one of the ones that wanted to be on that morning walk. And one of the early devotees and I used to get up at 2 in the morning and go to Golden Gate Park and pick flowers in rhododendron dell, make garlands for Srila Prabhupada, and then present them to Srila Prabhupada, go on the morning walk. It was in the park. And they were always very, very special moments for us, to walk next to your spiritual master, to try to chant Hare Krishna as he is chanting Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada was always chanting Hare Krishna. His hand was in his bead bag, if he was sitting in his rocking chair or behind his desk when he wasn't writing. So certainly the morning walks, they were japa walks, and he walked very briskly. Srila Prabhupada walked like a young man of 25. I remember I had wooden yogi shoes between the toes, and the first day I went for a walk with those shoes on, my feet bled because Prabhupada was just snapping right along very fast. Yeah, morning walks were glorious with Srila Prabhupada. The first day that I assisted Srila Prabhupada in the kitchen was for my sister's wedding in New York. And Srila Prabhupada cooked in a very small galley kitchen in his New York apartment. both sides counters, and he gave me the singular task of making a very difficult preparation called aloo kachori, which is still my Waterloo, because it's one of the most complex pastries to cook properly. It has to cook for a long time without becoming greasy, and that's almost impossible. It's like the elephant through the eye of a needle at the best of circumstances. But because the stuffing for this is mashed potatoes, it is even more difficult. If it's a pea kachori that can blow up like a stuffed puri, then it's easy. This is very difficult. So for nearly 8 hours, I was given that singular task of making aloo kachoris, while Srila Prabhupada cooked a 14-course feast for the wedding single-handedly in his kitchen. And in the course of cooking that feast, I made so many mistakes from the very first day in his service. The first mistake I made was I had a very short skirt on and little t-shirt and sitting cross-legged, and I said, Swamiji, may I have a cigarette? And he popped his head out the corner and he said, go wash your hands. So I went and washed my hands. And so then he explained the 4 principles in Krishna consciousness. 4 prohibitions: and no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex life, no intoxication. So then, short time later, I said, Swamiji, may I have a glass of water? And he said, go wash your hands. So then he explained the first and simple, foremost principle in cooking is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord, to cook for Krishna with love and devotion, and not think about our senses, our tongue, our sense of smell, the belly. This is cooking for Krishna. So then short time later I said, Swamiji, it's very hot in here. I was wiping perspiration. Go wash your hands. So then he began a little bit, the simplest principles, rudimentary principles of external cleanliness. And then he explained just the simplest touch of internal cleanliness. By balancing both of them, are we able to engage in the idea of serving Krishna through this art of cooking. So all 3 things, first day in the kitchen. I always had an attraction to Vrindavan. And as early as 1967, I wanted to go to Vrindavan. So I remember one morning, we were on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. I believe that was around Stowe Lake. And I was walking right next to Srila Prabhupada. And he stopped. He put out his cane, he was leaning on his cane. And he said, so, we have received a letter from Achyutananda, and he wants some men to join his party in Lucknow. So I immediately popped up, said, I'd like to go, Srila Prabhupada. May we go? May Gurdas and I go? He said, yes, maybe we can arrange that. We will start an American house in Lucknow. Then we walked a little farther. Then he said, no, you should not go now. And he turned around and he said, someday I will take you to India on foot. I will show you India on foot. So from that moment I was waiting for that day that would come. And that came about 3 years later, 1970, October 4th. Our party of American and European devotees landed in Bombay, and our party had just a few days earlier arrived in Calcutta via Tokyo, some swamis. And in that fall between October 4th and Srila Prabhupada leaving India, in the spring of 71. In so many places, he showed us India on foot, literally walking on foot through the streets. The first San Francisco temple had certain similarities to the first New York temple, but then quite a few dissimilarities. The first being that in New York there were very few women. In San Francisco there was almost an equal balance of men and women. So already the chemistry of the temple was different. But in most places we were like Srila Prabhupada's children. I think the rasa of being children was foremost, although when one studies the letters of this period, we'll also find that sometimes Srila Prabhupada referred to us as his sons and daughters, and sometimes mothers and fathers. He let the role reverse for intimacy. But I think there isn't a devotee from these times, from the early days, who did not feel that every moment with Srila Prabhupada was intimate. Srila Prabhupada had such a way of showing a love and affection through distributing Krishna consciousness that immediately we felt he was the only object of. I'd never known what love was until I met Srila Prabhupada, and I think that was true for all of us. We learned to love each other through Srila Prabhupada, and we had very deep, wonderful, transcendental relationships between each other as God brothers and God sisters. And Srila Prabhupada was the father. That was the mood, at least in our San Francisco temple, and that was slightly different from New York. Because, again, there was a mix of the boys and girls. He called us boys and girls. And we were. Most of us were in our 20s. Between 25 and 30 was the average age of our San Francisco temple. I remember he was lecturing. Unfortunately, we do not have tapes from this period. Srila Prabhupada was recorded. I recorded with my little tape recorder. Gargamuni recorded when he came. And Hayagriva recorded. And out of all the recordings taken at this time, the only tapes that survived are the Krishna Lila tapes with Hayagriva, with Golden Avatar. So many of those have been lost. But he was lecturing on, not the TLC, but the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I remember after some very considerable amount of time, one of the devotees asked, "So, who is Lord Chaitanya?" And Prabhupada said, "Oh, such a nice, intelligent question. You are so intelligent for asking this question." And this is the subject matter of his lecture for several days. So he was so patient with us, whether we fell asleep or we cried, somehow or another we begin to hear, what is this Krishna consciousness? But most of us tasted our Krishna consciousness through chanting, dancing, and feasting. I think that's what we had senses for engaging in the most in those early days. Srila Prabhupada liked anything that was well prepared. He tried to teach us technique, procedure, quality, cleanliness, purity, in simple ways. He didn't teach with a lot of words, he taught by example. And of course, he had personal favorites. At this time, Srila Prabhupada was had a little tummy, and he was eating immense quantities of rice. Sometimes we would feed a very large thali, and he would finish off most of that thali, leave a little maha for us. But the things that he taught us were generally fatty and juicy and sweet and succulent and very sumptuous. That was the era of sumptuous prasad, because he felt if he could catch us through the tongue doing two things, vibrating and respecting, if he could capture us through those two ways, then we would begin to taste more and more of Krishna consciousness. So the food was sumptuous and rich. On that day I made very Bengali food and served it in a Bengali fashion, arranged on the thali in a Bengali order. And Srila Prabhupada's sleeping room is where he respected. And so he sat behind his desk, and Pishima, we gave a small chunky. She sat it just directly opposite Srila Prabhupada on the floor. So as soon as I brought the thalis in and sat them down, Srila Prabhupada started making these little comical remarks about his sister. And he said, you know, she says it is water, I say it is fat. And I thought, my goodness, he's talking about her weight. You know, what's going on? And she, as soon as Prabhupada started kind of being light in his voice, Pishima kind of started chuckling. You know, she started kind of laughing on the side. And he said, all this. And he went like this. He was flapping his arm back. He said, this is fat, he said. But she calls it water. It's not so. And then he started teasing her. He started telling her about, oh goodness, the days when in their childhood they used to fly kites. And he said, I always used to beat her at kites, he said. And back and forth, he was speaking very brother-sisterly about his little sister. So she was laughing, not understanding a word of all this. And in the course of all this kind of jesting, I was bringing the chapatis in, relays of chapatis. And when Srila Prabhupada finished his meal, I noticed that every katori, the little round bowls that all of the moist preparations that are in and serving a thali, they were now piled one on top of the other, from the largest to the smallest, nearly 12 inches high, on top of his chunky. And when I walked in the room, he took his finger like this and he knocked down the whole stack. And he said, Yamuna Mai ki jai. And I said, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And Pishima said, Gauranitai ki jai. And I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, you ate everything. He said, now this was a speech that the two of us had with each other. Srila Prabhupada and I had signals for what the quality of the prasad was. Already now things had evolved much from the very early days. And if he patted his stomach, that meant it was third class. If he went like this, second class. If he went like this, first class. This meant excellent. So he said like that, excellent. And in this way, I remember very light, sweet, jovial, humorous first meeting with Pishima, where she didn't understand a word of what was going on, but she truly loved it. She was very, very fond of Srila Prabhupada, and from that day that I met her until the very last that she was with Srila Prabhupada in 1976, I was also present in Vrindavan. She worshipped him. She just worshipped her brother. And he obviously was very, very fond of her. With Nagar Kirtan, with our congregational chanting, it was the joy of watching Srila Prabhupada pray to Krishna, because I think I explained a little earlier that when Srila Prabhupada first introduced the kirtans in our temple, first he sang. In the evening, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings, he sang Mangala Charana, alone. And we all were the rhythm section behind that. Our San Francisco was temple was a very musical place. We had so many instruments, and everyone played an instrument. Nobody sat in the temple. Everyone played something. It was a very reciprocal relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And he sat on his Vyasasan and he closed his eyes almost always when he sang this Mangalacharana, and he went very deep into prayer. And when he opened his eyes, gray slits, moist, and he looked down at us, it was very often as if you felt as if Srila Prabhupada was looking right through you, seeing everything, seeing Krishna. So by simply observing him pray to Krishna, we got an idea of the depth of what prayer was, even in these early days. And then the kirtans were simply rock-out sessions. I mean, if one person stood, everyone stood. If another person danced, you danced, because we were all packed right in together. And they were very joyous, beautiful, joyous, long, languorous, sweet kirtans. So through that, japa was a very personal thing, and I don't remember a great deal of concentration or discussion between the devotees about japa. Mostly it was congregational chanting. Generally, Prabhupada would reveal what he thought we needed to know. Some people, their nature is to ask endless questions, but I always felt like a fool asking more than what Srila Prabhupada revealed. Now, if we didn't hear properly, then Srila Prabhupada would have to ask questions, and he would have to repeat. But I found very often the same things that he taught in 1967, say even in regards to cooking, he was revealing that night that same subject matter in 1976, so many years later. Prabhupada kept Krishna consciousness very simple, and for those of us who engaged in his service, at least my relationship was simply to hear and to follow those instructions personally. When we arrived in London in 1968, our small party decided that the best way to become known, Prabhupada wanted us to make a splash. So the best way to become known would be reach the Beatles, because they were luminaries of the time. So we agreed that we would make prasadam dishes, apple dishes, to bring to Apple Records every day and see if we could catch someone's attention. So we did that, and the prasad went from the lower floors to the upper floors, so that ultimately everyone tasted some of that prasad, and they became a little addicted to that. So finally, when we stopped sending prasad, we were notified, where is this Apple Hare Krishna group? So we came to meet them, and ultimately I think met George that day. And the first person to strike off a serious friendship with George was Shamsunder. He and George Harrison just clicked. They were like brothers. Shamsunder used to rock back and forth. He was a tall, thin man. He used to rock back and forth. And I remember when he met George, he was rocking back and forth. And George Harrison started rocking back and forth like this. And practically their whole relationship was, I remember, like this, back and forth. Very close friends they became. But ultimately through that, George became aware of our chanting. Now Mukunda Maharaj, now then Mukunda Das, he was a musical genius, an arranger and a composer, and he was the leader of our group. We all played instruments, and he composed the melody for Govindam, and we used to go about London and do Sankirtan at various places, the Arts Lab and a macrobiotic restaurant. So we were pretty tight musically. And when George heard that we were into transcendental chanting and chanting Hare Krishna, he really wanted to hear us. And almost right away we started having really good kirtans with him at his house, and said, I want to record this. And so the first thing we did was the Hare Krishna mantra on a 45, and I believe it was Sri Krishna on the backside. That became number 1 in Czechoslovakia, was top 10, topped the pops in England. And then that led to the larger album, the Govindam album, which the lead cut was the Brahma Samhita, the Govindam prayers. So Srila Prabhupada was, of course, very happy with the involvement that we were having with the Beatles. We ultimately lived at John Lennon's Tittenhurst estate for much of the fall of '69. And when Srila Prabhupada finally did arrive, he was so very pleased of this connection. I believe he called that Govindam cut a Krishna conscious symphony. This is a Krishna conscious symphony. Very transcendental, He liked that. And in the course of moving the deities, I believe each man two per deity, I was following. One of them knocked. The curtains were closed. We were behind adjusting the deities. And one of the persons, somehow or another, inadvertently knocked one of these columns with their elbow. And in as fast as an accident happens in an automobile going 70 miles an hour, everything slowed down into slow motion. And I remember watching this column go out with the speed of lightning. Srila Prabhupada moved all of the paraphernalia with his right hand off the bottom granite step, stepped up with his right foot on the first step, his left foot on the second step, grabbed one column, this huge column, the column was at least 6 to 8 inches in diameter, with his right hand, and Radharani's hand with his left hand. And I saw on his brow little beads of perspiration, the first time I had ever seen him perspire. And this was such a chivalrous thing that Srila Prabhupada did that I understood what the rasa of chivalry was. And he had that in protecting Radharani. Well, that's one example of Srila Prabhupada exhibiting a very personal rasa with Krishna, actually saving Radharani from disaster and exhibiting superhuman strength and the alacrity of the movement of the mind. It couldn't have been faster. Je anilo prema dana karuna.
Hare Krishna. So I got this service of sharing about the life of Her Grace Yamuna Mataji. So personally, understanding about her life, I was very much inspired, and I understood that Mataji and other disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they are very intimate. They have very intimate relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and they are just like family members of Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada loves them, and they love Srila Prabhupada, and they were selected uh, by Lord Krishna to support and help in his mission to spread this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. So one of the members, one of those family members of Srila Prabhupada in this mission was Her Grace Yamuna Mataji. Her faith for Srila Prabhupada is very, very special, and we see that in her life. So we heard directly from herself about Leelas with Srila Prabhupada, but we'll try to discuss something more. So her name was Joan, and the date of birth is 19th of May 1942, and she was born in Montana, USA. So there are many pastimes of Mataji with Srila Prabhupada. So one of that is how she first met with Srila Prabhupada. Mataji already explained that in her offering, but we'll try to understand it again. So Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj explains that in a more deeper way. So he tells that so the first marriage in ISKCON was Mukund Prabhu, who is now, his name is Mukund Swami Goswami Maharaj, and Janki Mataji. So Janki Mataji was sister of Yamuna Mataji. So Srila Prabhupada was doing this marriage, conducting this marriage, and he requested Janaki Mataji that you can call your family members in this marriage. So her family members were living in Oregon, which is around 3,000 miles from that place. So none of the family members came, only her sister came, Yamuna Mataji, or previously she was known as Joan. So she came, and when she first saw Srila Prabhupada, she was very much attracted to Srila Prabhupada by the she explained in this offering how she saw Srila Prabhupada. He was not wearing his kurta, and his body was shining, and Yamuna Mataji was affected by that. And then Srila Prabhupada offered her prasadam. Actually, Yamuna Mataji had a microbiotic diet, like she had a very restricted diet. But Srila Prabhupada gave her prasadam with so much love and affection and care that she couldn't say no. And she took that prasadam and she felt very nice. Then Srila Prabhupada told Yamuna that because it is your sister's birthday, so it is a custom in India that during marriage, the family members of the bride, they prepare they make the preparations. So Srila Prabhupada said, I am her spiritual father and you are her sister. So we both have to do this. So both of them went to the kitchen, and from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m., 6 hours, they were constantly preparing prasadam for all the members who came for the marriage. And as told by Mataji, they made around 15 preparations. Srila Prabhupada actually did this with the help of Mataji, 15 preparations. Um, so during this period, as Mataji also told in her offering that Mataji wanted to smoke a cigarette in between. And Srila Prabhupada, see, these are all leelas. We cannot judge them with these pastimes, but it is like a leela with Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, go and wash your hands. And then Srila Prabhupada, during cooking only, Srila Prabhupada told her that what are the four regulative principles. So like when we preach to the new students, we arrange a session, and then we arrange, a class for them, we arrange kirtan for them, we arrange prasadam, and then we give philosophy. But Srila Prabhupada is directly doing services, directly in the marriage of her sister. He is directly teaching during cooking only about the philosophy. So how Srila Prabhupada was so impactful in preaching to the new people. In this way, Srila Prabhupada told her, and then she said, can I drink water?" Then Srila Prabhupada said, "No." Like Srila Prabhupada said, you go and wash your hands again." And then he explained her about the purity of consciousness while cooking for Krishna. So in this way, Mataji started learning from Srila Prabhupada how to cook for the deities, how to please, how when we cook we are actually in this consciousness we are preparing this bhoga for Krishna, and it should be highly pure. In this way, she learned about cooking from Srila Prabhupada. And this whole meeting, her first meeting with Srila Prabhupada, was very impactful on her. After that, she went back to her home also, and she could not like forget about Srila Prabhupada. So after some time, she was going to get initiation, and Srila Prabhupada initially gave her the name Kalindi, but few seconds later, Srila Prabhupada just thought about it and said, "No, your name is Yamuna, Yamuna Devidasi." And she asked, "So what does it mean?" Srila Prabhupada said, "Yamuna means the river where Krishna does his sporting activities." So in this way, Srila Prabhupada, personally initiated her and explained her the meaning of her name. So fortunate, such great souls. So we'll also see uh, some contributions by Mataji. So I also heard from His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj about Yamuna Mataji that she was a highly dedicated devotee in this movement. And once Srila Prabhupada wrote in a letter, in one of the letters, Srila Prabhupada has written that Yamuna Devi is on the level of Bhav Bhakti. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj says that Srila Prabhupada, when he used to talk about Yamuna Mataji, he used to glorify her unlimitedly. Uh, Glorification automatically came out of Srila Prabhupada when he spoke about Yamuna Mataji, because he knew that this devotee is not a normal devotee. She has a very high standard of bhakti. And whatever Yamuna Mataji learned from Srila Prabhupada, she uh, wrote in books, like she learned cooking. She made this book called Lord Krishna's Cuisine, the art of Indian vegetarian cooking. So I also saw that Mataji has given many lectures about this in many temples. In Chowpatty, she has given one lecture about how to cook for Srila Prabhupada. At the same time, she has also taught not only about cooking, but also about the standards which should be maintained in the kitchen uh, for while we are cooking for Krishna. Along with that, she had many talents. We know how these devotees, they went to London, and they got the attention of the Beatle band. And Mataji was also a very nice singer, so they used to go to the home of George Harrison, and they used to perform bhajans and kirtans. And George Harrison was mesmerized by these kirtans. And it is not just the kirtan, but because they were pure followers of Srila Prabhupada, they just wanted to follow the orders of Srila Prabhupada. So that purity also got transferred in George Harrison. And he thought that we should compile together some nice songs. And they started compiling songs. And we all know that these songs became popular all over the world, not just in England. They became popular all over the world. And then Mataji also sang the famous bhajan, which is now sung in all the temples during deity greeting. Just imagine, Mataji is so, I mean, like she's such a pure devotee that her song, her voice is heard by Shishi Radha Krishna, so many deities, every morning at 7:30 a.m. Govindam Adi Purusham. So, like, how we can understand how one devotee can make such a big difference in the whole movement. So these were not normal devotees. They were very special souls which were selected by Srila Prabhupada to spread this movement. Apart from that, uh, the team which went to London, to UK for preaching, so Yamuna Mataji was part of that team, and they got this Bhakti Vedanta manner. Uh, Along with that, they also established the deities of Radha Landanishwar. So in Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit, there is famous pastime of how Srila Prabhupada acquired these deities of Radha Landanishwar. And Mataji actually helped in acquiring those deities and building the temples also. So I also heard from His Grace, I also heard from one devotee that Mataji and Guru Das Prabhu. So Mataji's husband is Guru Das Prabhu, who is also Srila Prabhupada disciple. So they both were given the task by Srila Prabhupada to go and build temple in Vrindavan, the Krishna Balram temple. So it was a very difficult task because Westerners in India, and especially in that area, they were so many times they were cheated and they were exploited by the Indians. Even today, this is the case. When some Westerners come, the Indians actually exploit them. And that time, like they were the first two devotees, white people, who went to Vrindavan, and they have to build the temple from scratch. The stones, the bricks, the sand, the land. Such, like, even today, if an Indian has to do this, he has to spend so much of his energy, brain energy, to build his house. And they are going to build temple. So obviously, uh, they they did that, and they pleased Srila Prabhupada by their activities. So they assisted Srila Prabhupada in cooking, and she assisted in temple building. And whatever she learned from Srila Prabhupada, she passed on those teachings to her juniors in the movement. At the same time, apart from the kitchen, she also contributed a lot in giving the standards of deity worship. Like, because also She learned it directly from Srila Prabhupada about the standards of deity worship. Um, one day, Malati Mataji and Yamuna Devi Mataji, they went into the room of Srila Prabhupada and they started preparing his bed. Like, because Srila Prabhupada wanted to take rest, so they were preparing the bed for Srila Prabhupada. And when Srila Prabhupada came inside, he was thinking like it is so unusual for a sannyasi that he's taking services from Matajis. And and he said to both of them that, like sometimes I feel like I am your father and you are like my sons and daughters and you are helping me. And sometimes I also feel that I am your son and you are like my mothers and you are caring for me. So Prabhupada had such amazing relationship with them, with Mataji and with other disciples. And that is why Yamuna Devi Mataji, she also felt in her last days that she wanted to serve Krishna by empowering women, doing something for the women, not just in a materialistic way. Actually, like she knew that how Srila Prabhupada respected women, how Srila Prabhupada understood that like anyone can become a devotee, a great devotee of Lord. So she wanted to establish that because the new people were not able to understand that clearly. So there is one pastime, very interesting pastime, which I would like to share, which I heard from Radhana Swami Maharaj. So which shows actually how Yamuna Mataji was a great devotee and a great, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. One day, I think it is 1971, and Srila Prabhupada was traveling in train, and he was feeling hungry. And Yamuna Mataji was there. She was the cook for Srila Prabhupada during that time. And Srila Prabhupada requested, "Can we get hot rice?" He was feeling hungry. And Yamuna Mataji just thought for a moment, and she thought, "What could be done?" So she understood that in the trains we have pantry where cooking is going on. So she went to the pantry for cooking, and she asked the responsible person, "My guru wants some hot rice, so I want to cook hot rice in your kitchen." So the man was like we don't allow these things here. In a train you cannot cook. If you want food, we have food. You can take it. Mataji said, "No, I want to cook." And that person bluntly refused. "You cannot cook in train. You are not allowed to cook here. Whoever you want to serve, your guru, whoever he may be, but we cannot allow you to cook here." So Mataji became like she thought, if I cannot serve my guru, what is the purpose of my life? What is the use of this life? She went to the door of the train and she was going to jump. And she told that person in kitchen that if I jump from this train and if I die, you will be responsible. So either you allow me to cook or I am going to jump. And that man said, "Oh Mataji, please you come and cook." In this way, that person allowed Yamuna Mataji to cook. And first of all, Mataji cleaned all the vessels and like because all those vessels were very dirty. And then she cooked boiled hot rice for Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada gave her a utensil for storing the rice. So she took that rice and she came to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada saw that rice and he was so pleased. He was so pleased. It was not just the rice because of which Srila Prabhupada was pleased. Srila Prabhupada was pleased because of the surrender of uh, Mataji. Because she could handle any situation and she could serve her guru in any circumstances. So if we imagine our condition, for us it will be very difficult because uh, we sometimes become shy or we think, how can we serve in these circumstances? It is very difficult. But these Western disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they were so dedicated uh, for Srila Prabhupada and they felt such affection and such devotion to Srila Prabhupada that they were ready to sacrifice anything for Srila Prabhupada. And this is what Krishna tells in his in Bhagavad Gita that Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vaja. In this way, these disciples of Srila Prabhupada took full shelter of instructions of Srila Prabhupada, and that is why they are glorified all over the world now. And we are very fortunate that we got some association from these devotees, and we are able to hear from them today and hear about those leelas which took during those times. So we all pray to Yamuna Mataji that we may develop some some dedication, some fraction of dedication which she had for Srila Prabhupada, and in this way we can serve Srila Prabhupada lifelong, eternally. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Har Grace Yamuna Mataji ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanande. Hari Bol.